On May 31st, 2018, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Not Too Young to Run bill into law. This followed an 8-day ultimatum by 55 youth organizations in the country. The bill seeks to enable younger Nigerians to contest elective political positions, and this singular act, to a large extent, brought back hope to young Nigerians who are believed to form the largest section of the country's population. However, since the accent of the bill, the level of youth participation in core politics is still largely inconsequential. On the morning show today, a writer, youth advocate, and influencer, Debo Onifade, in his book, shares with us actions young people need to take and policies they must put in place to start influencing elections as 2023 comes upon us. Good morning, Mr. Onifade. Thank you for coming in to talk to us.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Well, yes. I mean, we argued over who was going to get the copy of the book. We did.
Well, I eventually just got mine.
Exactly. But last night we got to look over the book, have a read of it, and personally, I don't know if I can be biased and say favorite chapter, but the chapter that stood out was chapter 3, which was power belongs to the people, but we must first learn politics. Tell us about why that chapter. Firstly, I want to ease you into this because I have a lot of criticisms. But tell us about why that chapter was important to you, especially the slogan of the power belongs to the people. Let's start there.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Power belongs to people. That's a fact. But in Nigeria, when I say people, I'm talking about a lot of young people who just like to talk on social media, but they never want to walk. It's too much of talk, very little action.
Right.
And one of my objectives is to raise the conversation completely from ignorance, too much of talk, sensationalism, to understanding of politics and policies. It's important for people to learn how to win politics. It's also important to learn policies. So I spent a lot of time also talking about policies.
Yes. And
I believe that you have to start from your area of strength. I mean, in America, for example, you have the big states. In the cities, Democrats will win easily. In the rural communities, they will find it difficult to beat Republicans. So sometimes people say, oh, only the uneducated people vote, stuff like that. Okay, what about in the city? Why can't we have people that went to school, why can't we have good turnout from them? They will say things like, everything is won by godfathers. And I remind them that some elections in this country, godfathers sometimes lose.
Right.
So people can always tell you it's impossible, but you have to remind them of a few examples that show that it's possible, and we can start from areas of strength.
Okay, well, on the subject of godfathers, in said chapter, you do mention Olusegun Obasanjo, former president, quite heavily in that part of the book. And you've said that he's always had a strong influence on powerful politicians. You mentioned different areas, but generally it's across the entire country of Nigeria and indeed in other countries. Can you tell us how you think that's true and why you think that's true? So
in that chapter, I did an X-ray of the 2019 elections, and
yes,
I talked about all the players, including the current president. I mentioned many people, including Bola Tinubu, as well as the rookies. And I said that if you want to go into politics today, I said OBJ is not one of the godfathers you should look out for. He has a lot of influence outside the country.
What do you mean by look out for?
I mean, I mentioned in my book that it's important. I'm not naive to think that you don't need godfathers. The long-term solution to Nigeria is to eventually have a new party that will defeat the old order. A party different from APC and PDP, a single party. Everybody has to come together to form a single party. And I mentioned Imran Khan a lot in my book, a very good example, who broke the jinx. For the 50 years in Pakistan, two parties have ruled the country. As a matter of fact, two families and the military. But this is a guy that took 20 years to break this order. Came out in his early 40s, returned from England, very popular like a J.J. Okocha-Okano, captain of the World Cup cricket winning team. But it took him 20 years. He won election in his local community. He began to build coalitions. He collaborated with good and bad people, Not exactly like Godfather, but he was willing to compromise and deal with a lot of people. And in 20 years, a new party has won elections. For me, that's the long-term solution. It's going to take us time. But I also believe short-term solution includes people joining APC, PDP, sometimes riding on Godfathers. And when you win an election, you put people first before the Godfather. So I know that...
Yeah, but a lot of people might argue with you that if you go there, if you get it through a Godfather, you're already compromised.
You're indebted to them,
You're already
absolutely.
indebted to them.
Okay,
so how do you extricate yourself from the control of the Godfather? But let's even go to the title of your book, Liberating Nigeria, a guide to winning elections and reviving our country. That is to say that liberating Nigeria would only be done at the ballot box.
Exactly.
Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Emphatically, I've said that I don't agree to revolution. I don't believe in military takeover. The best solution is still democracy. And I'm telling people that it's possible. We have to be patient, but we have to learn. My generation is a very arrogant generation. And we think that the older people don't know so much. And I'll give you a good example. In the last election, the older people learned how to come together. They presented 2 candidates. The young people presented like 30 candidates. That's the first sign that we don't know what we're doing. We're very ignorant, maybe very foolish sometimes, and we think that we know much more than those people. And I have a friend that said, oh, because we're very ambitious. I said, well, the older people are also ambitious. Right. But they understand that sometimes it's important to bury your ambition, bury your hatchet, come together. And we've got to learn that. The young people have got to learn that. They've got to learn that it's important, to come together. And I'm saying that, and I'm saying, we have to still find a way to solve it with democracy. One other example real quick. In Egypt, we had this revolution. Young people came together. Everybody came together. They ousted Mubarak.
Mubarak.
And what happened? The Muslim Brotherhood, which has existed for 80, 100 years, they're banned, but they came up, they created some political parties, and their sponsored party won elections. And it became that was democracy. It became, they didn't do well. The minorities were victimized. Eventually, they had to do another revolution. What is Egypt today? Egypt is back to status quo. We have somebody like Hosni Mubarak. He took power, military guy, eventually converted to a democratic president. And that's what happens when you just plan without, because the guy...
The older generation, let me just quickly throw this in before I lose it. The older generation that you talk about, the Nnamdi Azikiwes, the Awolowos, the Fabalewas, you could name a long list of them. These people all started in their youth. They fought the fight of, independence in their youth, in their 20s, in their 30s. So what exactly has gone wrong that today's Nigerian youth does not see that he actually has a stake in the nation called Nigeria?
Okay, so before I go to that, let me finish this thought and link together.
Yes, very
good. The guys, the Muslim Brotherhood Party, because they were organized, the younger people did not have an organized political party. No organized single political movement that was big enough to win elections. And that is the reason why the revolution did not succeed. And Egypt lost a lot. So
bring it home.
So what I'm saying is that we have to form a strong political association. I mean, we could start from a social political group, and I'll talk about that later. But it's like we have to look at the politics and not just about the talk, and not just about, we want Buhari to resign. How do we get power? And then, back to your question. So when I say older generation, I'm actually talking more about this current old, generation. Now, those ones they had problems collaborating too. As a matter of fact, I said the reason Awolowo did not become president was that he couldn't collaborate effectively. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with our youth is, I think we're actually more corrupt.
Wow, that's a strong statement. Okay.
Than the older generation.
Right.
If you interact with younger people, you will see what I'm saying. I need to be very emphatic about it. We are not as good as we claim to be. In terms of knowledge, how many young people do you know read history? When I talk to people...
At university, you mean?
In general.
In general.
20s, 30s, how many people really understand politics? You go to social media, people don't understand it. They don't get it. And I'm like,
but is that as a result, is that the fault of these lazy Nigerian youth, or is that the fault as a failing of the educational system?
Well, no, I don't think you need to be educated. You don't really, I'll give you this, and it's more in the south than in the north. Do you know an average northern young person is far more politically conscious than a southern person?
Well,
I don't know that to be true, actually.
That is a fact,
yes,
including the educated
true.
ones. And I'm saying we have the machine here. We have the propaganda machine. We have everything. But we're not learning politics. And these guys will go back home to vote when there's an election. I was talking to my friend, you know, a northerner, and I say he's an aristocrat. He doesn't like me saying that. He says he's a middle class like me. But, you know, if you know about the aristocrats, you know, their lifestyle is, their way of raising is different. And then he told me that...
All right, we'll put you on hold. Debo, Onifade, we're talking about the book, Liberating Nigeria. Stay with us for more on this particular discussion. All right, we've been talking with Debo Onifade, who just authored a book, Liberating Nigeria, a guide to winning elections and reviving our country. And you were talking about the youth, and that's really a scathing statement that the Nigerian youth is corrupt.
More corrupt than our predecessors.
Yes, and it's the same Nigerian youth that you believe can actually lead, lead the charge.
So I was saying that the northern youth vote, including the educated ones, they have been told from their childhood that it's important, political power is very important. And I'm saying even my friends, that some of them schooled abroad, some of them lived in Lagos, they vote. When you talk to them, you see a typical Aboki around. What do you see with him?
The transistor.
A transistor. What is he listening to? BBC Hausa, VOA Hausa. That guy understands politics a lot more than the typical social media guy around here. But we're so arrogant. They didn't go to school. They don't understand what's happening. But that's, and then, it's cattle that vote, you know. I'm not saying rigging doesn't happen everywhere. But we're sometimes condescending and think that it must be some cattle that vote. The fact is that we have to become more politically conscious.
Did you say cattle?
I mean...
Oh, okay.
So, but we have to be more... Lagos, 21 million people. Last election, how many people voted? Oh, just over 1 million people.
Yeah.
Kaduna. You're talking about 2 million people. You're talking about huge numbers. These are states that don't have anything close to Lagos in terms of population. It's not only about rigging. I know rigging happens everywhere, but I'm talking about even the people, the educated people. So I'm saying the young people that have gone to school have to vote. And if you're watching me in Lagos and you just talk, you do not vote, you know, again, this is the first point. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should start voting from today. It's important to get your PVC. 2023 is a good starting point for everybody. It's going to take us many years, but let's start
Well, thankfully, the president said that the youth should wait until 2023 to begin to...
I mean, I don't think we need him to advise us on what to do. I think we have to take the bull by the horn. We have to start planning to come out en masse. This is my vision. I hope that I can use technology to have influence, to bring not less than 10 million people on a portal, and eventually we would be able to influence those people before elections.
Right. Well, this is the problem I had with the book. I did enjoy it, but as I said, I found parts of it to be a little problematic because the way you've written it, it just feels like there's such a tightrope in being able to galvanize political change while still being a politician, like you said. So, for example, you talked about the People's Democratic Party and how part of their failure in the last presidential election was their need to change their branding. Perhaps they should have changed the name and focused on modernity. But then you go on to talk about Omoyele Sowore, for example, and criticize him for him being too nonconformist
and arrogant,
and saying that he was too modern. So how do we walk that tightrope in wanting to progress with the future and be modern, but still, as you say, not forget the fact that you need to be a politician, you can't forget the politics? How can somebody tally the two?
So first of all, I mentioned in the book clearly, technocrats don't win elections anywhere in the world, except Hong Kong and Singapore.
Yeah.
And I mentioned in the book that in Italy and Greece, they used technocrats during a crisis period. Those guys, none of them lasted up to 2 years. Technocrats, if you want to become a politician, you have to transition to a politician. You know, OBE, Mogalu, everybody comes touting their technocratic credentials. I'm like, no way. That's even a disadvantage. You have to learn politics. because technocrats don't win. So in America, politicians, UK, everywhere, it's all politics. And I'm saying every country has its idiosyncrasy, and let's not be too judgmental over Nigeria. Zoning is not going to go away anytime soon. Godfatherism is still going to be in place for a long time. If you don't have money, even in America, what I don't want to use, they don't use that word, but you have to get money from big companies. Yeah. And sometimes these big companies can also influence.
Yeah, I mean, lobbying is a common part of politics as well.
So, when people just use Godfather sometimes, only in derogatory times, I say, it's not all the time. As a matter of fact, again, I've said long-term solution is that we have to have a different party. But if you ride on the back of a Godfather to win an election, then it's your responsibility to put people first.
But it all seems rather theoretical because we're focusing on Nigeria at large. And if you look at Nigeria's history, when it comes to godfathers, it's not as simplistic as you make it out to be.
Let me answer that question about Showore. I just remembered. Now, among the rookie politicians. In my book, I said rookie politicians are the ones that are not willing to learn. They don't know so much about politics. They're passionate. But I said they can transition into new bridge politicians by learning politics. He was one that had the most followership, I would say, among those guys. But he also wasn't willing to learn. When you want to win elections, you have to bring people together and you soften your approach. You want to work with good and bad people. You're not going to, when you win election, you're going to work with good and bad people. Electorates, you're going to meet good and bad people. So when you become a politician, it's a time when you want to make sure that you're even policies. I listen to him on policies, and I feel he is not humbled himself to learn a lot. Even I watched programs here, and young people are talking, and people are giving comments, and he's rubbishing their comments, and I'm like, you need to learn even policies, but more importantly, politics. I'm not saying he needed a godfather, but there are politics all over this country. And let me give you one example. There is zoning in this country. That's a fact.
Could you tell us what zoning is for our viewers who might not?
So zoning actually, people say it started in 99. I don't really think so. But let's talk about 99. The North had ruled a lot. Abaya was killed. And the North, because they always have the numbers. Again, they have genuine numbers. I don't agree when people just say it's only about rigging. They decided that it was time to compensate the South. And they chose Obasanjo. That was a fact. Everybody that follows politics knows that. And they said, so that people say 4488. I don't care whether it's 4488, but there's zoning. When Yar'Adua died, things got, muddled up. But then things are back to zoning. What it means is that when it's time for the South, the North backs the South for power. And when it's time for the North, the South backs the North for power. But
there are those who say that zoning has been the undoing of Nigeria. That's why the best man never really emerges at the end of the day. But let me even come back to your book, and that's page 1 that says, I seek to ignite a new wave of patriotism across Nigeria and explain how, within a few election cycles, liberation can sweep through the country. The buzzword there for me is patriotism. And that seems to be what is lacking.
And that's what I'm trying to ignite.
Every part of
That's what I'm trying to ignite. I'm trying to tell people that part of your duty as a patriotic Nigerian is to vote. It is also to be engaged in politics, join a political party, have a candidate, campaign for your candidate, And I'm saying that's my biggest objective, to really ignite. Many people I talk to, Nigeria is doomed. It's not going to happen. People have lost hope. And I'm saying, I believe that we can do it. But don't say your vote doesn't count. Don't say it's only about corrupt people. And people say there's violence everywhere. And I say, during election day, I believe violence doesn't happen in 100% of the locations. Even in the locations where they are peaceful, people are in their house, resting, sleeping, just watching TV, not going out to vote.
Yeah, but for an average 18-year-old who has grown up within a family, went to school and all of that, you would have turned 18 before you can start voting. The issue of patriotism does not start when you're 18. The foundation for patriotism should have been laid way before that.
Yeah.
So where do you think we really need to start?
So personally, I'm looking for those 16 and 17-year-old kids. And that's why I met a nice guy yesterday, and I'm saying, I know I might eventually find myself in some programs in Hilton. I said, but that's not the kind of program I'm looking for. I want to attend young programs. Where, can you guys look for a big musician, gather 10,000 kids, 16, 17-year-old? I'm going to roll my sleeves, come, fly down, come talk to those people. I want to talk to those 16, 17-year-olds who are going to get their PVC very soon. And I'm telling Nigerians, these guys are going to be maybe 10 million people in the next few years. They can determine who wins the election. People less than 18. So I'm looking out for those first-time voters. That, to me, is my biggest target. I think that they can influence this country in the next, couple of years. But the old 30s, 20s, and when I talk to them, who did not support the election, Buhari government? I think that sometimes you will be surprised that even the young people. Children had 8,000 votes in Lagos in the last election. 8,000. What does that tell you? It shows even the young people voted for the old people. So, for me, I don't actually care about age. I want the old and the young to come together. I'm looking for there are a lot of repentant old people. They're older now, and they believe that they have become calmer, and they're willing to work with young people. But they know a lot. I learned a lot more from older people. I talk to older people. My best friends are older people. We discuss history, politics. We can talk for 3 hours. I don't enjoy talking to many of my mates because people just don't...
You're not learning anything. I want to take you back to what you spoke about with regards to zoning, and then you mentioned 4488. Now, the 4488 that you're referencing is, of course, the first term and going on to the second term. And you state in your book that if presidencies and governments were, instead of focusing on the second term whilst in the first term, they do a lot better. Furthermore, you talk about Nigerian elites comparing or inaccurately comparing Nigeria to Rwanda, and the fact that Rwanda is so prosperous now, even after all the destruction that they have been through, the genocide, the civil war, and the unrest. But do you think that that's attributed to what you quote unquote call a brutal dictatorship led by Paul Kagame?
Absolutely. People don't want to, when people talk about Rwanda sometimes, they're like, do you know what happens in that country? It's a brutal regime. And brutal regimes can get this done quickly. So don't let's even talk about Rwanda when we're analyzing Nigeria. I don't like it when I hear very highly educated Nigerians comparing us. I don't want to mention names. Some of the very popular, highly respected people consistently compare us with Rwanda. It's a tiny country. It's ruled by oppression. And the guy there, Kagame, has been there for how long? I mean, that's not a good comparison. So let's not even... Nigeria is so different. Massive country, heterogeneous, massively heterogeneous. And we need to fix our own problem our own way. And nobody should keep comparing us with those tiny countries led by...
Do you think that Nigeria would be in a different place if we had stayed under the military regime? Because I say this because Paul Kagame's regime, I know this for a fact, when he has policies to be read by the people underneath him, you have to come into the office at 4 a.m. and you must have read the policies from the night before. If you do not, you have to prostrate on the floor and you will be flogged. So I can agree with you that it is led by a dictatorship. Do you think that we would be in a better position if we had stayed under the military regime where people were asked to frog march on the street and so on?
I'll say no, because we've tried it before, it didn't work.
Is democracy working though? Sorry, Kutura.
I think ultimately we have to make democracy work. It's a lot of corruption, but I clearly know that we've tried the military, it didn't work. So if it worked, maybe we would all be saying, we would all have examples to cite, but it didn't work in Nigeria.
So, and you dedicated a whole chapter to restructuring.
Yes.
And in the papers this morning, Obasanjo actually said violent agitation for self-determination looms in Nigeria if, we don't begin to listen to those who are calling for restructuring. That in his time, people were calling for true federation.
So again, it's so funny about it when people talk about restructuring, because when you're out of power, you say, we need more,
You've got to give us the cliff notes on this restructuring, because we want to hear it, but we only have 15 seconds left.
Oh, okay. So I believe restructuring is very important, but I believe it's not going to happen soon, because what we need is a sovereign national conference, which is not going to happen anytime soon. So we have to fix Nigeria before restructuring. We're not going to get sovereign national conference And we're going to keep waiting for the next 8-10 years without fixing the problem.
Wow,
Okay. We'll have to leave it there.
I could speak to you all day. Wow.
Thank you so much, Debo,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
author and of Liberating Nigeria. Okay.